A secret report hit the desk with such force that coffee spilled over documents which, if discovered by the Nazi secret police, would have meant immediate death. March 17, 1943, Berlin. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of the German military intelligence service known as the Abwehr, held in his trembling hands a report that challenged everything Nazi leaders believed about the war. From the tall windows of his office, he could see the canal where, years earlier, the body of Rosa Luxemburg, a German revolutionary murdered in 1919, had been thrown. Now, he held in his hands information that would change the course of the Second World War. According to intercepted communications and reports from German agents operating in Mexico City, the Willow Run plant of the Ford Motor Company, a factory located in Michigan, United States, was producing one heavy B-24 Liberator bomber every hour. Every hour. The B-24 Liberator was a massive warplane with 1.5 million individual parts, 450,000 metal rivets, 30,000 separate components assembled into an 18-ton aircraft. And it rolled off the production line faster than Germany could manufacture a simple military Kübelwagen vehicle, the German equivalent of the American Jeep. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, an intelligence officer standing firmly before Canaris' desk, had verified the numbers 3 times. The data didn't change. What neither of them knew was that this moment would trigger the most devastating intelligence failure of modern warfare: the systematic inability of the German secret services to understand, believe, or effectively communicate the true scale of American industrial capacity to Nazi leaders, condemning the Third Reich Hitler's regime through a fatal mathematical miscalculation. The collapse of German intelligence regarding American production had begun 2 years earlier. In 1941, General Karl Koller, a high-ranking Luftwaffe officer, had presented Hermann Göring, the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany and supreme commander of the Luftwaffe, with reports from the German military attaché in Washington claiming that American aircraft production was approaching 2,000 planes per month. Göring had laughed, literally laughed, declaring that Americans only knew how to build refrigerators and shaving machines, not military aircraft. "The Americans are lying," Göring had told Hitler at the Wolfschanze, the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's military headquarters in Poland, in December 1941, 4 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. "Their democracy makes them weak. Their mixed population makes them inefficient. Their Jews make them corrupt. They cannot produce what they claim." By March 1943, German intelligence networks across the Americas were reporting something that defied every assumption of Nazi racial theory and economic understanding. The reports came from different sources: Mexican industrialists sympathetic to Germany, Spanish diplomats, Swedish businessmen traveling through Detroit, even intercepted letters from American workers to relatives in neutral countries. All said the same thing, something that seemed impossible. The Willow Run Ford plant alone was producing more heavy bombers than all of Germany's aircraft factories combined. Lieutenant Colonel Nikolaus Ritter, head of the Abwehr's air intelligence section known as Abwehr 3F Luft, had spent 3 weeks analyzing the data. A former Lufthansa pilot who had lived in the United States for 10 years before the war, Ritter understood American industrial capacity better than most German officers. His Manhattan apartment in the 1920s had overlooked the construction of the Chrysler Building. He had watched Americans erect the tallest building in the world in less than 2 years. "Admiral," Ritter reported to Canaris, "if these numbers are correct, and I believe they are, then Germany has already lost the war. Now it is only a matter of mathematics and time." The intelligence arrived through dangerous routes, each more perilous than the last. Georg Nicholas, who ran the Abwehr's main network in Mexico City, had cultivated sources among American businessmen traveling freely between Detroit and Mexico's oil fields. These men spoke casually of the miracles they had witnessed, unaware that their dinner conversations were being transcribed by German agents. On February 3, 1943, an American oil executive named Harold Morrison attended a reception at the German-Mexican Trade Association in Mexico City. After several tequilas, Morrison began describing his recent tour of the Willow Run facilities, organized by Ford to showcase the company's ability to meet government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison had said, unaware that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent posing as an Argentine leather merchant, was memorizing every word. "What I saw defies description. The assembly line is more than 1.5 kilometers long. The building is so vast that clouds form inside it, and sometimes it rains inside the factory. They have 42,000 workers, including thousands of women, black women, building the most complex machine ever created." Morrison pulled out a pencil and began sketching on a napkin. "The bomber has 2 bomb bays, each capable of carrying 1,800 kilos of explosives. 4 engines, each producing 1,200 horsepower. They build them in sections, sub-assemblies Ford calls them, that converge like rivers flowing to the sea. Wing sections arrive from one direction, fuselages, the main body of the plane, from another, tail assemblies from a third. They meet at precise points along the line," Blau had asked, trying to sound casually curious. "But surely such complexity must cause frequent breakdowns, production delays." Morrison had laughed. "That's what Consolidated Aircraft, the company that originally designed the B-24, thought. They mocked Ford, said you can't build airplanes like cars, but Ford broke the bomber down into 60,000 separate operations. Each worker performs the same task again and again. A woman who yesterday was cooking breakfast for her children now installs hydraulic lines in the tail section. They train them in days, not months." Perhaps the most detailed intelligence came through Francisco Franco's Spain, the Spanish dictator who officially maintained neutrality but sympathized with Germany. Colonel José Ungría, the Spanish military attaché in Washington, had close relations with American aircraft manufacturers while secretly supplying intelligence to Germany in exchange for shipments of tungsten, a metal crucial to Spain's industry. In March 1943, Ungría attended a reception at the Argentine embassy where he met Charles Sorensen, Ford's head of production and the architect of Willow Run. Sorensen, believing he was speaking with the representative of a neutral nation that might purchase aircraft after the war, spoke freely about the plant's capabilities. Colonel Sorensen had said, unaware that every word would be in Berlin within 2 weeks. "When I first visited the Consolidated plant in San Diego in 1940, they were building B-24s outdoors under the sun, each one different from the last, taking 180,000 man-hours per aircraft. I knew we could do better." Ungría had pressed for details, claiming professional interest as a military engineer. Proud of his achievement, Sorensen obliged. "I spent one night in my hotel room in San Diego sketching out the entire production flow. We would build bombers the way we build cars, not with workers swarming over a stationary plane, but by moving the plane past stationary workers. Each worker would perform specific tasks repeatedly, achieving perfection through repetition." The Spaniard had asked about the labor challenges of such complexity. "We built an apprentice school that trains 8,000 workers weekly," Sorensen replied. "Women make up 40% of our workforce. They're actually better at detailed work, smaller hands for tight spaces, more patience for repetitive tasks. We have black workers operating precision machinery. We have 16-year-old boys managing supply logistics. Democracy means using all available human resources." Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish channels, German intelligence received consistent reports confirming Willow Run's production rate. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg visited the plant in March 1943 and reported that the factory operates with an efficiency that defies European understanding. They use 1,600 specialized machine tools, many designed for single operations. The capital investment is staggering, perhaps $200 million in tooling alone. A coded message from Japanese commander Toshikazu Omai to Tokyo, intercepted by German intelligence, provided independent verification. This single factory produces more aircraft monthly than the entire Japanese aviation industry. By April 1943, German intelligence had compiled complete data from 17 independent sources confirming the production rate. The numbers were astonishing. Willow Run alone was producing 650 B-24s per month at its peak, with total American B-24 production exceeding 1,400 per month. Desperate for on-the-ground verification, Canaris authorized Operation Pastorius, the insertion of saboteurs into the United States by submarine. George John Dash, leader of one of the two four-man teams, had lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939. His secret orders from Canaris were to gather intelligence on aircraft production before conducting any sabotage operations. In the early morning hours of June 13, 1942, Dash's team landed at Amagansett, Long Island, having come ashore from submarine U-202 just after midnight. Within days, tormented by the implications of his mission and what he already knew about American capacity, Dash surrendered to the FBI, the American Federal Police. During his interrogation, Dash revealed something that astonished his American captors. Canaris himself told me that Berlin doesn't believe its own production figures. They think Willow Run is propaganda. He wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping records, proof that would force Göring to accept reality. FBI Special Agent Charles Landman asked incredulously, "They don't believe we're producing one bomber per hour." Dash laughed bitterly. "Agent Landman, I lived here. I've seen your automobile factories. I tried to tell them that if Ford could produce one car every minute before the war, they could certainly produce one bomber every hour during it. They accused me of being defeatist." On April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Canaris personally presented the intelligence to Göring at Karen Hall, the Reich Marshal's lavish hunting estate north of Berlin. The meeting would become legendary among German intelligence officers for Göring's complete rejection of reality. Canaris had brought photographs, intercepted documents, reports from dozens of sources. He spread them across Göring's massive oak table like a dealer laying down losing cards. "Reich Marshal, sir," Canaris began carefully. "We have confirmation from 17 independent sources. The Ford Willow Run plant is producing one B-24 Liberator every hour at peak output. They have maintained this rate consistently since January." Göring, weighing more than 280 pounds at that point in the war, picked up one of the photographs showing the assembly line stretching into the distance. "Canaris," Göring said with disdain, "do you take me for a fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, propaganda props. The Americans want us to believe they can build airplanes like sausages. This Willow Run plant probably produces 50 bombers a month at most." Canaris pulled out another document, an intercepted Pennsylvania Railroad manifest showing aluminum shipments. "Reich Marshal, they are consuming 7,300,000 kilos of aluminum per month in this single plant. That's more than our entire monthly output." Göring laughed harshly. "And where do they get this aluminum? From their black workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been duped by American propaganda." A week later, Canaris was summoned to the Wolfschanze to brief Hitler personally. The meeting included Generals Alfred Jodl and Wilhelm Keitel, senior military commanders, and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels. Hitler, studying maps of the Eastern Front where the German army was preparing for Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, listened impatiently as Canaris presented the intelligence. "My Führer," said Canaris, knowing he was risking his life, "if the Americans are producing 1,400 B-24s per month, plus an equal number of B-17s, another type of heavy bomber, plus their fighter aircraft, plus British production, then the aerial bombing of the Reich will soon exceed our defensive capabilities." Hitler's response was characteristic. "Admiral, the Americans are capable of mass-producing simple goods, automobiles, refrigerators. But a bomber is not a car. It requires precision, skill, dedication. It took us 6 years to prepare for war, and they claim to have achieved this in 16 months? Impossible." General Jodl studied Canaris's figures and made a quick calculation. "Even if we accept 1/4 of these numbers as accurate—" "The numbers are false," Hitler interrupted. "The Americans entered the war in December 1941. To build this miracle factory and reach such output in that time is impossible." Unknown to the Nazi leadership, Canaris had obtained motion picture footage of Willow Run in operation through American intelligence contacts in Switzerland. The film, smuggled via Spanish diplomatic pouches, showed 5 minutes of the assembly line in full production. Canaris and his deputy, Hans Oster, another German intelligence officer, watched the film in a locked room at Abwehr headquarters. The camera moved along the entire 1.5-kilometer assembly line. B-24s in every stage of construction moved steadily past. Workers, men and women, black and white, performed tasks with mechanical precision. A visible clock in several shots confirmed the timing. "My God," whispered Oster. "It's true." Canaris lit the film with his cigarette lighter, watching it burn. "We can't show them this. They'd accuse us of creating fake footage or of being traitors." In November 1943, German intelligence obtained aerial photographs of Willow Run taken by a Spanish diplomat. Photo analysts spent weeks studying the images. Their conclusions were revealing. Parking lots contained approximately 12,000 cars, indicating 3-shift operations. Completed B-24s were visible on the adjacent airfield. 47 planes ready for delivery. The assembly line was visible through Skylight's aircraft spaced exactly as reported. Rail sightings showed dozens of freight cars delivering materials. German intelligence officer Hermann Vernard wrote that the photographic evidence confirms the human intelligence. "The production rate appears accurate. I recommend immediate strategic re-evaluation." When Göring was shown the photographs, he dismissed them as clever American photo manipulation, probably using scale models. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's Minister of Armaments and the only Nazi leader with a genuine understanding of industrial production, secretly obtained the American intelligence. His diary entry of May 15, 1943, discovered after the war, reveals his despair. "If the Willow Run figures are even half correct, we face not defeat, but annihilation. They produce more aircraft in 1 month than we do in an entire year. But I cannot speak this truth. Doing so would be my death sentence." Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland, the internal security branch of the Nazi SS, and a trained economist, analyzed American economic data. His report to Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, in December 1943, was stark. Ford Motor Company's peacetime production in 1941 was 1,100,000 vehicles. They have converted this capacity to bomber production. At current rates, by June 1944, the Americans will have produced enough B-24s to drop all the tonnage we bombed London with in 1940 every single day. On Christmas Eve 1943, Canaris received intelligence showing projected American production for 1944, B-24 Liberators, 18,000, B-17 Flying Fortresses, 12,000, B-29 Super Fortresses, 1,000, fighter aircraft, 40,000, total 86,000 planes. Hitler's response when presented with these numbers was blunt. The Americans claim they will produce more aircraft in 1944 than all nations have produced in all of history. Absurd. By February 1944, Canaris had been removed from his position, suspected of defeatism and treason. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was a loyal Nazi who would not dare contradict Hitler or Göring. But reality could not be ignored forever. On February 20th, 1944, during the so-called Big Week, the American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, sending more than 1,000 heavy bombers against German aircraft factories. In 6 days, they dropped more bomb tonnage than the Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz, the massive bombing of London. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Adolf Galland told Göring, "Reich Marshal, I've counted more than 800 bombers in a single formation. These planes are real, and they're dropping real bombs." On June 6, 1944, D-Day, the Allied invasion of France, more than 11,000 Allied aircraft appeared over France. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300 fighters in response. Field Marshal Hugo Sperl sent a desperate message to Berlin. "The enemy's air superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves." By April 1944, Willow Run reached its peak production rate. That month, employees working 2 9-hour shifts 6 days a week produced 453 aircraft in 468 hours, a production pace equal to one completed B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. The plant employed 42,331 workers, including 11,000 women, 26% of the workforce, 3,800 African Americans, 9%, and 1,200 workers with disabilities, 3%. This demographic composition would have utterly shattered Nazi racial ideology. The so-called inferior races and weaker sexes, according to Nazi propaganda, were outproducing the German master race by orders of magnitude. After the war, surviving German intelligence officers revealed the full extent of the failure. Walter Schellenberg testified at Nuremberg, the trials of Nazi war criminals. We knew the truth about American production by early 1943. Every professional intelligence officer understood that the numbers were accurate. But reporting this truth meant risking execution for defeatism. Hans Bernd Gisevius, a German intelligence officer who survived the war, wrote in his memoirs that the tragedy was not that we lacked intelligence about American production. We were drowning in it. The tragedy was that our leadership refused to believe it because it contradicted their racial ideology. The German intelligence officers who tried to report the truth paid a heavy price. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris was executed on April 9, 1945, at Flossenbürg concentration camp. Hans Oster was executed the same day at Flossenbürg. Alexis von Renner was executed in October 1944 for his involvement in the July 20th plot, a failed attempt to assassinate Hitler. Hans Bernd Gisevius escaped to Switzerland and survived the war. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey, an exhaustive analysis conducted after the war, confirmed what German intelligence had reported. Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24s between 1942 and 1945. Peak production reached 650 aircraft per month. The hourly rate was sustained for months. The total cost per plane dropped from $238,000 to $137,000. Albert Speer, in post-war interrogation, was asked why Germany had not believed the intelligence about American production. Accepting that Ford could produce one bomber every hour meant accepting that our entire worldview was wrong. That democracy was not weak but strong. That racial mixture did not create weakness but strength. That women could do the work of men. It would mean admitting we had started a war we could never win. Who would tell that to Hitler? Rose Will Monroe, the real-life inspiration for Rosie the Riveter, the American cultural icon representing women working in factories during the war, operated a rivet gun on the B-24 production line. She and thousands of women like her had never worked in industry before Pearl Harbor. We knew we were building something important, Monroe said in a 1984 interview. Every rivet we drove was going to help end the war. We worked double shifts sometimes, sleeping in the parking lot between shifts. We had brothers, husbands, boyfriends flying those planes. The failure to believe the intelligence about Willow Run had catastrophic consequences for Germany. In fighter production, Germany continued building bombers until late 1944 instead of focusing on defensive fighters. In resource allocation, materials were wasted on wonder weapons and impractical experimental projects instead of practical defenses. In strategic planning, operations were designed to face hundreds of bombers, not thousands. In diplomacy, peace proposals were delayed due to a failure to recognize certain defeat. German economists who analyzed captured documents after the war realized the true scale. Willow Run had cost $200 million. The total investment in the entire German aircraft industry from 1933 to 1945 was equivalent to $400 million. Willow Run's floor space covered 325,000 square meters. All German aircraft factories combined covered 740,000. Willow Run's electrical consumption reached 2.5 million kilowatts per month. The Americans had built a single factory that consumed more resources than entire German cities. The final count at the end of the war revealed the full scale. Total B-24s produced 18,188. Willow Run, built 8,685. Total B-17s produced, 12,731. Total American aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945, 300,717. Total German aircraft produced in the same period, 94,700. The United States produced 3.2 times more aircraft than Germany while fighting a war in two oceans. Historians call Germany's intelligence failure regarding American production one of the most consequential in military history. It was not a failure of collection. German agents gathered precise, detailed intelligence. It was a failure of acceptance. Leadership refused to believe information that contradicted its worldview. Dr. Gerhard Weinberg, a prominent historian of the Second World War, concluded that German intelligence accurately assessed American production capacity by early 1943. Had this intelligence been believed and acted upon, Germany might have sought peace 2 years earlier, saving millions of lives. History carries profound lessons. Cognitive bias. Accurate intelligence can be rejected if it contradicts core beliefs. Ideological blindness. Political ideology can override mathematical reality. Systemic failure. Intelligence systems that punish uncomfortable truths are rewarded with comfortable lies. Fatal miscalculation. Underestimating one's opponents leads to catastrophic errors. In 1985, during the dedication of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, former Rosie the Riveter Rose Will-Monroe met former Luftwaffe pilot Hans Rudel, one of Germany's most decorated aviators. Rudel asked, "How did you build so many, so fast?" Monroe replied, "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing fancy. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their best." Rudel responded, "We were told democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were told lies, and those lies killed millions. I should have questioned more." That encounter, filled with mutual respect between former enemies, showed that beyond war lay the recognition of the courage and dedication of both sides to their respective causes. In the ruins of Berlin, in May 1945, American intelligence officers discovered a final German intelligence report on Willow Run, dated April 20th, 1945, the last birthday of Hitler. Willow Run production confirmed. We reported this truth 2 years ago. We were not believed. Germany dies not for lack of intelligence, but for lack of wisdom to believe intelligence that contradicts what we wish to be true. Let future generations learn. Reality does not bend to ideology. Mathematics does not yield to mythology. Truth ignored becomes tragedy. The report was never delivered. By then, Hitler was in his bunker. The 1,000-year Reich had only days to live, and thousands of American bombers, many built at Willow Run, were delivering the final argument that German intelligence had tried to make 2 years earlier. The verdict of history is clear. German intelligence was excellent. The acceptance of that intelligence was catastrophic. In that failure to believe uncomfortable truths lies a warning for all nations. Reality does not care what you believe. Those who deny reality in favor of ideology will, in the end, be destroyed by it. Willow Run built more than bombers. It built proof that democracy works, that diversity strengthens, that freedom produces results. German spies counted every one of them. German leaders believed none, and that disbelief killed the Third Reich as surely as any bomb. What is extraordinary about this story is not only the triumph of American industry, but the professionalism of the German intelligence officers who, despite risking their lives, tried again and again to report the truth to a leadership that refused to hear it. Men like Canaris, Ritter, and Oster were not mere spies. They were professionals who understood that their duty was to provide accurate information, no matter how unpleasant it might be to their superiors. These officers grasped something fundamental that their political leaders had forgotten, that in war, as in life, objective truth always triumphs over ideological illusion. Mathematics doesn't lie. Industrial production cannot be faked on a grand scale. Numbers have no political loyalty. The final irony is painful. Germany possessed one of the best intelligence services in the world. Its agents were brave, its analysis precise, its methods sophisticated. But all that professional machinery was useless because the final recipients of the information had already decided which truths they would accept and which they would reject. When Canaris burned that film of Willow Run, he was not destroying false evidence. He was destroying true evidence he knew would be interpreted as false. That act summarizes the entire tragedy, a man destroying truth because he knew truth would destroy him. The women of Willow Run, many of them mothers, wives, and daughters who had never worked outside the home, proved something Nazi ideology considered impossible. They demonstrated that human capability is not limited by gender, race, or social class. It is limited only by opportunity and necessity. Rose Monroe, who operated her rivet gun with the same dedication she once used to care for her children, was not trying to make history. She was simply doing her job. Yet in doing so, she and her fellow workers showed that when a society mobilizes all its human resources without discrimination, its potential becomes exponentially greater than that of a society that limits who can contribute based on prejudice. The African-American workers of Willow Run, operating complex machinery and performing highly technical tasks, silently disproved the racial theories that underpinned Nazi ideology. Every rivet they set, every component they assembled, was a practical refutation of propaganda that called them inferior. The 16-year-olds managing complex logistics proved that age matters less than training and motivation. Disabled workers finding roles where they could contribute proved that a wise society finds ways to use all available capacities. The factory itself was a statement. A building so vast, it created its own internal weather. A 1.5-kilometer assembly line, electrical consumption equal to that of a city. All of it built in less than 2 years, from blueprint to full production. When German officers finally visited Willow Run after the war, whether as prisoners or as observers with the strategic study teams, many stood in silence. It wasn't just the scale that stunned them. It was the late realization that every report their fallen colleagues had sent was true. Every number Canaris had presented was accurate. Every warning Ritter had given was justified. Colonel Hans Rudel, when he met Rose Monroe in 1985, was facing not just a former factory worker, but the embodiment of everything he had been taught to despise, and what had turned out to be the key to the enemy's victory: a woman, a civilian, an ordinary person doing extraordinary things simply because her country asked her to, and her system allowed her to. Monroe's response was perfect in its simplicity. We just went to work, we did our job, we punched in and went home. No mysticism, no racial secrets, no complicated theories of national superiority. Just free people choosing to work hard because they believed in their cause. That simplicity was precisely what Nazi ideology could not comprehend. To them, everything had to be grand, mystical, built on elaborate theories of race, blood, and destiny. The idea that true strength came simply from allowing everyone to contribute to the fullest of their ability, regardless of who they were, was incomprehensible to their worldview. The final reconciliation between Rudel and Monroe represents something profoundly beautiful. Two people who had once stood on opposite sides of a terrible conflict, meeting decades later, not with hatred, but with curiosity, respect, and even humor. Rudel admitting he had been lied to. Monroe explaining that she had simply done her part, both recognizing each other's humanity. That is perhaps the most important lesson of all. Wars are fought by people mostly doing what they believe is right for their countries and families. The workers of Willow Run did not hate the Germans. They wanted to protect their loved ones. The German pilots did not hate the Americans. They believed they were defending their homeland. The real hatred lived in ideologies, not necessarily in the hearts of those who carried out the orders. When ideology stands between humanity and truth, the result is always tragedy. When truth is allowed to flow freely, when all voices can contribute, when data matters more than dogma, then even in times of conflict, there is hope that reason will eventually prevail. The millions of rivets set at Willow Run didn't just bind aluminum. They bound together a diverse nation in a single purpose. They proved that strength doesn't come from uniformity, but from inclusion. That progress doesn't come from limiting who can contribute, but from allowing everyone to. In the end, Germany wasn't defeated only by bombers. It was defeated by its own inability to believe that a system it considered weak could be strong. That people it considered inferior could be capable. That a worldview built on inclusion could overcome one built on exclusion. Truth, like those bombers leaving Willow Run every 63 minutes, was unstoppable. And when it finally arrived, it came not with theories, but with tons of aluminum, steel, and human determination falling from the sky. Because it turns out that when you let everyone help build the future, you build one far stronger than when only a few are allowed to. And that simple truth changed the world.